is the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, hosted by me, Kelly Donahue-Piro. This show is for growing insurance agencies looking to maximize their biggest investment, their people. Listen to the top agency performance partners clients share their story on how they boosted their performance by executing a plan. Let's head to the show. Hi, everyone. It's Kelly Donahue-Piro here, and I'm really excited for today's podcast because I get to interview a client that we've worked with for a long time, insurance management group, and they kind of figured out a way to help agencies with a core problem that they were struggling with, which is how to really make sense of your agency's data. And they created a company called Core Premium Logic. And Todd is just a great person. The way that they approach things, I think, is so in alignment with what I believe, what I think service should be. And I see so many companies in the insurance space just being more SaaS orientated. And here's a software, you go figure it out. And this is a whole different ball of wax. So sit back and enjoy our time with Todd daily. And there was a little mess up in between, so you might hear a little blip in the podcast. My Wi-Fi fell down at my hotel. So if you see a little woohoo, that's just because we're that awesome and we're doing this on the road. So enjoy, and can't wait to hear what you think about listening to your data and your insurance agency. Hi, everybody. It's Kelly Donahue-Piro here, and I'm very excited today because we have a fun guest. We have the one, the only Todd Daly. This is somebody who I've known through now, it's almost like 2 careers, because we met when you were on the agency side at IMG, and now you're kind of spearheading this really great new adventure, which is pretty awesome because I think you saw a need in the agency and you developed it, and then it was like, we could really do this. So I'm not going to step on Todd's toes. Todd, would you like to make your official formal introduction?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm excited that you had me here, and excited to be able to share kind of our journey and some of the things that we've learned. So as Kelly mentioned, I'm Todd Daly. I actually started my career on the carrier side. I spent 11 years at Liberty Mutual Insurance in and around data and business intelligence. And when I moved downstream to the agency world, you can imagine coming from a Fortune 100 company, the data and the structure. And I came to the agency land and everything was gut instinct and feel. And hey, I'm just kind of thinking this today. And my appetite for that waned quickly. And so it was a focus of mine when I came to the agency to try and give us a little more data and be more data driven in our decision making. Just because, in today's day and age, that's kind of table stakes. It's important to understand where you are, where you want to go. So we spent the better part of 12 to 18 months building out a solution on that front for us, happened to be in Power BI. And really at the end of it, we were in a great spot. That was it. We had developed what we had needed and sought out to do. And through some peer communities networking, we had shared that with some others in the industry, other agency owners, and very quickly understood that this was not just a IMG problem. And so we decided to form an entity to support other kind of small to medium-sized agencies and trying to figure out this data thing, because it's a complex, intimidating space. And that's how we started Premium Logic, which is the name of the company that we go out and again, help agencies get their handle around their data and help them with insights.
So what's interesting is I think I remember us having a conversation one day and we're like, what am I missing in these management system reports? I was like, no, that's just the way it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many different reports I ran and reran and different parameters and different settings. And at the end of the day, I still got a spreadsheet with about 60 columns and thousands of rows and left to try and make sense of it. So I was surprised, honestly, a little bit coming from the background that I did, that this is, was something that was such a challenge and still prevalent. And was just excited to be able to add value where we could.
One of the core things in insurance is like the management systems at their inception were policy management systems. They weren't really meant to be like accounting tools or reporting or marketing or sales management. And the industry's grown so rapidly that now they've got to figure some of these components out. But the problem is, and we were just chatting about this as we're getting onto the podcast, like insurance agents know how to sell insurance, not necessarily like run be like an analyst of data, right? Like a good insurance agent is like your brother, who's like, everybody knows him, everybody wants to work with him, and fun things like that. But I don't know if I could see your brother necessarily like sitting behind the computer screen doing what you were doing to get everything up and running. Would you think that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say 100%. Definitely different wheelhouses and skill sets, and your relationship focused people, so to speak, aren't always your data focused or and data. Honestly, it's an intimidating and complex space. It's not something that you can just kind of pick up on the side. There's a lot of nuances and a lot of ins and outs to really understanding the data.
Absolutely. So, I want to talk about really kind of, what are some of the challenges we see out there in the industry in regards to data? And just so Premium Logic it's system agnostic, right? So it doesn't really matter what system you're on. So I know for some people out there, be like, oh, it must be just for AMS 360 or this. Like, you really system agnostic, right? So maybe just so people understand, give them a little idea of like how it all works, just so as a context or conversation. This isn't meant to be like an infomercial, guys out there if you're listening, but just a kind of a brief overview, like what does it do? How does it work?
Yeah, for sure. And so basically what I like to say is if you can get the data out of your system into a spreadsheet, there's a good chance that we can help you out, right? If you have some aspirations on the data side and to get better insights. So that's really how it works today. We're working on some integrations with some systems, basically hooking up APIs and getting the data kind of real time, or on a batch nightly load. But right now, honestly, we basically on a whatever interval is appropriate for the agency, we load in a series of spreadsheets that we export from these systems and go through and update the data. So really not a ton of magic to it in that regard. A lot of the intelligence is built into the logic and what we do with those spreadsheets and translating those into visualizations on the front end.
So basically, it's kind of like you take the system information from here, upload it here, and it will give you pretty beautiful, colorful, historical data and graphs and charts of all key business metrics, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the one thing I would call out there, Kelly, is for each of our clients, it looks a little different, right? Sure. That's been a focus for us. We found a lot of solutions out there like, hey, this is the dashboard. And if you look at these metrics and you pay attention to these metrics, then great. That might be helpful. Or if your data on the back end fits into that mold, so the metrics can be displayed, great. For us, for each client, those dashboards have looked a little bit different because one of the things that I have found, and again, was a little bit of a surprise, but a reality that agencies have different processes. They have different KPIs that they look at to manage and run the agency. But you're absolutely right in terms of kind of the output on the front end. Those visualizations that agency really wants to look at, or leadership within that agency really wants to look at to help run the business.
That's awesome. So let's kind of dive into what are some of the challenges we see in agencies, and how does your company help kind of bridge that gap? So I'll let you go first. You have one that's burning of a big challenge you see in an agency?
I would honestly say it's just the lack of visibility to the data is probably one of the biggest challenges that we see, because they don't understand necessarily what their data quality is. And when you don't understand what the data quality is, then it's very difficult to make decisions on that data. So one of the things, in our quality dashboard that we have built into the solution, giving people an opportunity just to understand where their data quality is usually a big starting point to this whole journey. Because, I would say that if I had to, and I'll just kind of pause it right there, I would say having visibility to the data quality and understanding it would be the biggest thing.
I love that. I mean, I'll take what you said and say from my side, it's, there's such a lack of transparency at the team member level too of their metrics, that what ends up happening is everyone says, well, I feel like I'm working so hard. But it's a feeling, not an outcome, right? So we could be working really hard, reshopping the whole book, right? We could be working really hard chasing people to pay. We could be working real hard on all these things. And all of a sudden, when you can see the data, you can say, hold on, this quarter, we really need to focus on getting people on EFT, or we really need to focus on an online certificate platform. Like, how do we keep reducing the things that eat people's time and understand that when you're just sitting here and everything's coming at you? I always think of, I Love Lucy, when they're at the chocolate factory and the chocolates just like keep coming. Mm-hmm. It's like the work is going to keep coming. And so how do we get some intelligence to say, hold on, I don't really want, I was with an agency last week and we pulled her numbers. Well, they took 60 payment calls last week, right? Like, what if I could get that down to 30 and say each call's 10 minutes by the time you wrap everything up? That's a significant time savings every year that you could do better and cooler stuff with. So it's not always having data just to have data and say, you didn't sell enough this month, right? I think that the other component of it is, and I'm curious, like, how you guys are using some of the data that you're finding so people understand it's not this word of data and, it's also just business intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. I love what you said there, because we don't have any shortage of data in today's world. In fact, it's just the opposite. Like, there's too much to make sense of, and that problem's only getting worse. I don't even know what the words are. It was gigabytes and terabytes and petabytes. And now, when you look at the data out there, I'm several steps away from whatever the word is of how many bytes there are out there, but it's certainly, it's too much data. And this is kind of our goal, again, for those small to medium-sized companies who don't have the resources to maybe have an entire data team, or have a 6-figure data analyst on payroll, or have someone, who probably, like you said, has a skill set that's better suited to serve the agency this way, help kind of break down some of those data barriers. And what I love about what you said there is it's really about asking the right questions and seeing the insights to trigger some of those questions. I know for us, a huge one was revenue banding. We had not looked at revenue banding at all. And I'm almost embarrassed to share this experience that we kind of, or this journey we went through, because we found we were spending double servicing about, I would say, 20% of our clients than the revenue that was actually coming in. And we quickly adjusted to a team-based model that still provided, the kind of the same level of service, but we adapted to the needs that those certain clients, kind of what their needs were, which is obviously going to be very different from, higher, or more complex accounts. So, for us, it was a very healthy savings just by trying to ask the right question, or get things that trigger some of those questions very quickly. 30, 40, 50 plus $1,000, triggers can go off. I always love the Progressive story. Progressive, they kind of got traction by asking the question around those one-time drunk driving offenders, right? They found that a lot of times they did not repeat. It was someone who had a couple of extra drinks at a wedding, tried to drive home, got the message real quickly when they got that first DUI, they could charge whatever premiums they wanted, and the subsequent losses were very, very limited. It was about asking that right question and finding that insight that was big for them and allowed them to kind of go to the next level. So I love how you characterize that.
And I think a lot of times too, agencies think the only way to make money is sell new business. And I'm like, guys, there's like 8 to 10 ways you can make money in an agency. Where are you placing business? Are you charging fees? Are you charging fees consistently? Are we increasing coverage? Are we cross-selling? Like, there's so many ways, or just like even what you were saying, could we reduce? Maybe there's clients that need to be fired to make money because they're just not going to be profitable in the long run. So I think it's a really key component of everything too. And I just want to ask a follow-up question, because I know I've worked with your team, and I think sometimes people think about like, well, if I give my team a scorecard, they're going to leave, right? Like data in my mind can be used as a weapon, or it could be used as a tool, right? And sometimes in places, data is used as a weapon of, like, you didn't do this, so we're firing you, or, you're not a good person because you didn't do X, Y, Z. But I think that the way that you presented it was really transparency, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I would honestly say it's been, in a sense, transformational for us, which I know is a bold word, but one of the things, and we went on this data journey, one of the things that we did was we incorporated, and this isn't specific to Premium Logic, but we incorporated Net Promoter Scores. And Net Promoter Scores, because we had, as an agency, we don't necessarily have a product, right? We're a distributor. Right. Service is our product, right? So, that was a big thing for us to monitor. How well are we serving? Which essentially is how well are we doing at delivering our product? The team's ability to see the testimonials that come in from the Net Promoter Score. I mean, certainly when we got into this, our goal was to understand and make sure we were, providing a certain level of service. The motivation that has driven has been far and away the biggest benefit for us tracking Net Promoter Score. People's ability to see the impact that they're having on people and how people perceive their service is such an intrinsic motivator. Longer term, it's been. So to your point, just because you're tracking some of this, doesn't necessarily mean people have to feel like, you're peering over their shoulder, you're micromanaging them. And we've had this similar conversations. One of the things that we do within the tool is we look at the seasonality of people's books, right? You can see effective dates and premium policy counts and things. What a great conversation and dialogue that's created with our team leads and our staff, and just understanding when you're in the thick of things and maybe renewal review volumes are high, that there's light at the end of the tunnel, seeing, oh, wow, yes, there's a spike here. This is a, it's a crazy month. I know there's a lot going on, but they can see, things kind of fall off. Just understanding that. I was laughing with a teammate the other day. We were talking about when you're underwater, when you're drowning, right? You don't have an idea if you're an inch from the top or you 3 feet from the top. You're drowning, right? And so for people to kind of have that context and understand kind of where they are, it's powerful, because when you're drowning, you lose kind of all perspective, and so that's been helpful.
Well, and I remember when we talked about it, it's like when there's a busy season, there's got to be a slow season. You can't have one without the other. So.
I tried to get that out of my vocabulary and the teams as well. We're still working on that one.
That's okay. That's all right. But that's another identifier of business intelligence, right? Like when you have a season where you have heavier renewals, things are going, like, what are you doing? Maybe changing management systems during that time, or hiring a new person that needs training. Like, maybe we need to be hiring that person 3 months before that, so there's bandwidth. These are all the kind of sort of business intelligence scenarios that once you're empowered to be able to see the data, and let's be honest, Todd, right? Like you can't run a report in your system and see that, right? You have to be able to extrapolate that and visualize the data. And that is, I think, another one of the challenges that we have in this industry is the systems don't provide visualization of the data. So it's very difficult for somebody who owns a business or a manager, if you're not a data analyst, to be able to see that data and make quick and effective decisions.
Yeah, I think that's huge. That was another surprise for us. And I'll use the example of cross-selling. The concept of cross-selling is super straightforward, right? It's like, hey, across departments, whether that's personal and commercial or P&C and benefits, like it's a very straightforward thing. You can encourage that across your team. And we've done that. We've done that for years, but for whatever reason, it never really got us over the hump. Certainly there's a fear that someone else is going to come in and maybe mess up your account or, impact, although, I guess understood thing is the more lines you have, actually, the more retention you have. But there was still some hesitation. To speak to your point about just seeing the data and the impact that can have, we put together a cross-sell dashboard where we could look at, for a given producer, what do you have that we don't have in this other department, essentially. And so you could look at that. And we started out the year with 22 concrete leads in one of our growing departments that we didn't have a lot of penetration. And just because we had the opportunity to sit and look at that data with the producers and have a concrete conversation versus the conceptual, hey, let's cross sell more, where are we at on that? So I agree with you. As much as I had liked to think in the past before this and in prior career that at least understanding something, was really the most important thing. But with all of the noise and the things that we have flying around and the distractions, actually seeing it does seem to make a tangible difference.
So y'all, back in October, we released a whole course on how to plan and execute, literally how to build your agency's plan for all of next year. But if it's December 19th and you have not done it yet, or it's anytime this week, let me tell you something, last minute people, you need to buy this course right now because it's 30% off. We're doing 30% off this course this week. You can binge it. You can do it between the holiday and New Year and come back into the new year strong with your team, having a whole opportunity to go ahead and see what your vision is, what your plan is. This week, 30% off plan and execute, one time only that you can buy it. Other than that, you're going to need to go ahead and look and say, you got to subscribe to get that course. But we're doing 25% off our process packs, most of our swag, and our subscription to our online school where you get this course. So you can choose, buy it outright once, have it forever, or monthly subscription to all of our courses. Your choice, but don't delay. We have 1 week only where you're available to buy this course outright. So what are you waiting for? Your agency needs a plan next year. Take advantage of it today. Well, and I think I know too from owning a business myself and working with so many agencies, there's not always a lot of time to say, okay, let me sit down and learn how to run this report. Then inevitably, as you know, the first run of it, the data is not going to look the way that you're like, this isn't even possible. Mm-hmm. And it's either a download issue, an entry issue, or a report issue, right? And sometimes it's all three.
Yep.
So you end up getting super frustrated, and then you have a meeting and you're like, I don't want to deal with this because and this is where I feel like systems have failed the industry. Those reports, in all honesty, are not easy, right? Like there's not a simple way to do this without maybe partnering with someone like yourself.
Yeah, that certainly was our experience. And I know, and I'm glad, honestly, I think some agency management systems are attempting to make some strides in this and, are in some cases, getting some traction, and I hope they continue to do that. But yeah, that's certainly been our experience. It is challenging. And, in some cases, at least with our tool in particular, there's a couple of different benefits. In some cases, you can get to the answer. It just takes time, right? One of our clients had managers spending multiple days a month trying to just get the data out of the system, massage the data, get it in the format that the executive and leadership team wanted to see it in. Some of it is just time savings, right? It's like, okay, we can make sense of this spreadsheet or, for just to see where we're at, or we can get a year over year percentage growth or, some of those things, it's a time savings. But you're right, at least for us, as we look at some of the heavier hitting benefits, and that could be on the revenue growth side or on the expense side. We've talked about a couple examples, one on each side. A lot of times you just need to be able to see the data or have a little more sophistication in how you are processing the underlying data in the system to really get to the bottom of it.
Sure. What else do you see kind of out there as you're working with agencies and, how they're maybe using your tool or using your data in the long run?
Great question. I mean, I could talk a little bit about some of the data challenges we do see once we get in and start to understand the data a little better. One of the things is with downloads, right? Understanding that what comes through to you in a download isn't always necessarily the accurate picture for your agency. And what I mean by that, when you rewrite a policy to another carrier, that original carrier, it's going to download into your system as canceled. It's going to show up on cancellation reports and things. Again, if you don't kind of understand that and have, that might be causing issues in your retention numbers and accuracy, depending on how you're calculating that or how you're looking at it, or even how the system is looking at it. So, that's one example. Would love to hear some examples of that you've seen. And I know you're in and around the data with agencies all the time.
I mean, there's so much to be said too about like a proper workflow and who's using what field. So like commercial lines, especially commercial downloads, kind of a little bit the Wild West still. And so you have to have the right procedures to go in. Todd, to your point about the rewrites, you can't do some of that stuff until the download hits, right? So you could be like, I want to touch this file once, clean it all up. The download comes in and it wipes it out. And so there has to be this strong intention. And I heard this one thing about data once, and it said, it's not garbage in, garbage out. It's garbage in, garbage spreads, right? So it becomes like we all lower our standard of accuracy. So now all of the reports are just not trustworthy. And my experience, when you can't trust a report, people tend to just kind of throw their hands up. And this is also how I think an agency owner rolls some of these things out. Like we just built new reporting dashboards on our end, and we've just been looking at them for 90 days. Like there's no decisions being made, but there's just like, I got to make a change here. Like people have to understand where the data is pulling from, because for so many agencies, Todd, it's fair to say like they've never had anything like this. So as people see that, if I worked at IMG and I saw my scorecard and it was like, you did no renewal review calls, like Todd would have a choice of being like, get in my office. Why didn't you make any renewal review calls? Or we could say, I was using this activity code versus this one. Well, let's change your process so now you can see it and know. But I feel like it's the chicken or the egg, right? Like if you have the dashboard, you can catch the data inaccuracy because people are seeing it and can say, oh, okay, cool. I totally get that. And I'm kind of curious a little bit on your process, right? So what you're talking about is like, it's a big ball of wax. When we talk about like revenue banding and like some of these other things, how do you onboard agencies where it's like, let's just like, is there like a baby step, crawl, walk, run? Like, so it's not drinking from a fire hose. Like how have you seen it work best?
Yeah, it's certainly an iterative process. And what we found best is just to take the time to understand the agency to start with. So we have a discovery process that precedes any data. It's, hey, from an operational perspective and then from a financial perspective, those are two touch points we try and get with the person at the agency that kind of understands those things, just to get a landscape of how they operate. So for us, that's step one. And then we do several iterations with them, and that we start with, we've got kind of three key components of the system. One is like executive level kind of views or use cases, sales level views and use cases, and that can be for a sales manager or the producers themselves, and then service team. So we'll iterate through those. But even as we're going through the process, once we kind of get the data, we go through that discovery process, we'll put an initial kind of load out there, set of dashboards to, we'll review that with them, get some feedback, go back to the drawing board. We'll just kind of, it's a socialization, if you will, to kind of go through and make sure that, again, there's a familiarity. We'll generally, the executive dashboard focus is kind of early on, and then we kind of bolt on some of those others. And a couple of our clients, we've gone kind of live initially with two of the three, and then we bring on the other one when the time's appropriate, because it can be a lot to digest. And I think to your point, there's so much there, and you don't do yourselves any favors by taking, a bunch of data in a spreadsheet and then putting it into 25 dashboards or whatever, to where it just, you're overwhelmed in a different way. Yeah. Right. So there's monthly discussions, quarterly discussions, different things that we use to try and make sure we're breaking down some of the barriers for people engaging with the data. I wanted to add one other thing about what you were talking about earlier with the team members and the scorecards and such, as you mentioned that. One of the other things that our team has really appreciated about them, and again, we've been very, very mindful to position these and leverage these in the right way, is expectations. Like a lot of people, struggled with the stress and anxiety of, especially your top performers. Am I doing a good job? Am I not doing a good job? Like, how am I doing? Like, yeah, I'm kind of hitting this bonus target over here, but am I really And so for them to actually have clarity and transparency on, hey, these are the things that we think are most important for the agency to perform well and have those clear expectations, has been again, kind of, we've stumbled upon it, been a very welcome aspect of these. They know what we're coming into when we talk, and certain reviews has been helpful.
I think too, it's like, I love it. Like, people want to know what a good job is. That's 100%. I think that the component of it is that at the end of the day, I'd love to see people, like team members, be able to start looking at that stuff and understand it. It takes time, right? So we call it, like, you have to have active patience. I think the first time you see a report, you're like, what is this? And then, like, if you use it enough and you incorporate enough into the operations, people start thinking about, like, well, what does that look like? Or how many payment calls did I take? Or how many activities did I do last week? And so it's kind of like this management now is empowered to support the team more. And the team is now empowered to say, I can't spend as much time on one client as maybe I was doing. I have to kind of think through wrapping calls up a little bit faster, especially when out of an 8-person team, I'm number 7 on length of phone calls. Like, I could do better. And when they have access to it, you can start improving it. And I think that that's one of the things of just opening up access to people.
Yeah. And it opens up dialogue and conversations that, you don't otherwise have when, you might be looking at length of phone call time, and maybe from a managerial perspective, the initial perception is, well, the lower the better, right? Because you're getting on to the next call. But it opens dialogue and conversation around, well, I want to make sure I'm having at least one non-insurance related touch in that conversation, and asking.
Sorry about that. The Wi-Fi connection fell down. So if you can kind of go back to the beginning of that thought, we'll edit it all out.
Yeah. What was that? Where was I?
I don't know where I lost you, because I think I got cut off sooner than maybe you did, because sometimes with bad internet connections goes through. We were talking about transparency and data and interesting conversations about some of the data points.
Yeah, it opens up a really good dialogue, I've found, with the team as well. So, there are certainly managerial perspectives on things. And you mentioned, like, call duration, right? And I think, initially it's, well, the shorter, the better. Like, these are our top performers. They have the lowest call time. And it opens up a conversation with some of those people that may be looking to add one intentional touch, that's not related to the insurance transaction, checking in on family or, other certain things, that it just, again, it opens up a good dialogue. And I think at the end of the day, creates a good balance and expectations, and what is good and what's not, what are we actually seeking, conversation that, otherwise doesn't happen unless you have that data there to discuss it. So I find it to be very valuable in that regard also.
Well, and I love this, because we have a big saying, like, you have to operate out of facts, not feelings. Like, feelings don't have a brain. So, feelings are a reaction, they're a response. And so when you can have this great dashboard that, like, here's where you are, you can also have coaching conversations with people. And the thing I feel like is missing a lot in a lot of agencies is the ability to celebrate wins, because you don't see them, right? So if you can, whatever you're trying to target, increase your retention, now you can see it and have the pizza party or recognize people. But when you don't have access to it, you don't know. So you're operating emotionally because you're just putting out fires all day, as opposed to really saying, I put this fire out, but man, we killed it. We had our highest cross-sell day today. Like, it helps you balance your brain from what just generally comes across your desk.
Yeah, 100%. It's 100% right.
So as far as, like, the data process goes and things like that, what kind of agencies are you should be investing in something like this? Like, when you look at your target agencies, who are you seeing doing this? What's the expected outcomes? How long does it take? Like, just so people who might be making some end of year plans are kind of in the know of what something like this would look like.
Yeah. And so you mean just from kind of who we've been working with, like kind of our typical client, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I would say, our typical client probably falls in the we kind of use the terminology 2 to 20 million in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Enough revenue that you actually, there's a certainly amount of revenue where gut instinct works perfectly fine,
Right.
because you can get your head around it. So enough revenue that there are times where you're kind of losing sight of things on occasion. But then, you get to a point where you've got a certain amount of revenue and you are able to potentially have the resources to invest in a data team or data resources. So, certainly we've had outliers outside of that, but just like the idea better of having this part of their business outsourced, or, a trusted partner in that regard. But I would say that is probably our typical customer is in that range. So what other questions you had asked there?
How long does it take, right? So say an agency with $5 million of revenue calls you up and is like, we need this. We don't have a person on staff that can really do it, but I can see the value. Like what are the first steps and how long does it take?
Yeah, so it can be pretty quickly, and we have several templates built out with some agency management systems already. And if it's one of those, we've worked in Epic and AMS 360 and Nexture. For those that we have kind of have a template built out for, it can be really as little as 4 weeks. A lot of that is just based on availability of leaders within the agency to have some of those discovery conversations, to get on a call and review the dashboards and kind of provide feedback. So I would say 4 to 6 weeks for those is more common. If we're starting from scratch and it's kind of a brand new system and we're importing spreadsheets, usually that is more in the 8 to 10 time range. And again, depending on what resources are available internally, that can be expedited, or in some cases can run out a little longer. But that's generally what we've seen.
That's great. So basically, people really could get this going in by the first quarter of 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's a priority for the agency and there's availability there, absolutely, that it can be turned around in pretty short order. And at least at a minimum, we've chunked this up in different ways, right? Some agencies have said, hey, can we just kind of have a quality dashboard to understand where we are and look at that? And we've, been able to chunk that out really small, so people have some time to familiarize themselves with the data, make some process changes that they need to get the data quality to where they're then trusting the data and willing to make decisions on it. So a lot of different ways you can do it to get to insights, very, very soon, again, depending on what you're going after.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I just want to say that to every agency out there, don't try to be anything other than an insurance agent. Like do what you do best. And I know I've been to many agencies that are frustrated by reporting. I know I've been frustrated by my own business reporting from time to time. It's just something where if you can work with trained experts, you don't have to recreate the wheel. And the thing I can say personally, because I've had the pleasure of working with Todd and IMG over the course of, I don't know, many, many years now, just as a personal sentiment, I feel like you guys really care about your customers. This isn't like that strictly like SaaS model of you sign up and you get your dashboards and then bye-bye, right? I feel like you really want them to feel something and have that support that they need to really get this going. Am I on point with that? Because I just can't imagine you guys operating any other way.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Our goal in this to help. I mean, I have a full-time. Well, I want to say a couple things. One, I agree with your comment about sales agents not being data experts, because the vice versa is true with me. I'm more of a data expert and I am not involved in sales whatsoever at the agency. So I've certainly lived out that those are different skill sets and different passions even. But you're exactly right. I've got a full-time job at the agency, so to speak. So to have another full-time job isn't necessarily something that I was seeking out. It's just, it's an opportunity for me to help. I grew up, my dad was a small business owner. And I grew up with a passion around those small businesses and even small to medium-sized businesses. I think to be able to help, I mean, that's really our mission, is to be able to help them compete in this data-driven world with a lot of those large multinational entities, or nationwide groups and brokers that are getting bigger and bigger, by the way, with all of their acquisitions and merger and acquisition activity that's happening. To give people an opportunity to compete in that space without, having to have a data expert or spend six figures on a data resource. So you're 100% right. It's a very intentional process. It's a customized process. We meet with everyone quarterly. In fact, someone asked the other day, an investor of ours asked, is this a consulting model or is this a software play, right? Is it a consulting? And it's very much both. We feel like we've got a great software solution, but without us, and I was just on a conversation with a client yesterday who had some questions about how do I have conversations about these dashboards? Like I just kind of sent them out an email to these producers, and here was some of the feedback I got. We had a great conversation for an hour about how to maybe approach that, or some different tactics to try that we've had success with, or other clients have had success with. So 100%, if this was a software player, a burn and churn model, I just wouldn't have the passion I do. That, really getting in and making sure this actually creates the outcome, whatever it takes to get there, is really why we're in the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how would people find you if they were interested, and they want to learn a little bit more about what Premium Logic does?
Yeah. So premium-logic.com. There's a hyphen in there, premium-logic.com, or Todd, Todd, at premium-logic.com. Don't forget that dash. The URL transparently was much more affordable than the premiumlogic.com. So,
well, and if anybody has any questions, you can always reach out to me too. I do know how to get in touch with Todd if need be. So I know the dash. And I have your other top secret agency email too, if I ever needed it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you having. Yeah, thank you for having us. We're this for us. If anyone just has general questions about data, or your experience with it, or you're trying to develop something internally and you want some thoughts or tips and tricks, happy to jump on a call and have that conversation. For me, I would just love to see that progress in the data arena. This doesn't necessarily have to be a partnership with Premium Logic or anything else. Be happy to help however I can.
Awesome. Well, everybody, we'll let Todd go back to changing the landscape of business intelligence for insurance agencies. But thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Kelly. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. What did everybody think? Doesn't it make you want to just go ahead and figure out this complicated data mess? I've been very vocal about how I think that the management systems really do fail us a lot as far as, reporting and how complicated it is. So now that there's a really great solution out there for uncomplicating it, it's a good opportunity. You can definitely go find me if you want to learn more, or go ahead and talk to Todd. But hopefully you take this seriously, because the more intelligence you have, the more you can really work on your business, not always in it. We'll see you later.